The Sandy and Toddcast is a Mindgarden Media podcast in association with
Screw You, Todd
Productions.
Broadcasting from two very different yet magical places not found on any map. Get ready to discuss the strange, weird, ghostly, crazy, spooky, and odd things that take place around us each and every day. All while having a little bit of fun. This is the Sandy and Toddcast.
Welcome to the Sandy and Toddcast. It is season 14. It's episode 2. She is Sandy.
He is Todd.
And let's see where we roll with this one.
Yes, honestly, every time you say like season 13, now season 14, I'm like, that's crazy.
It's a long time.
We've been doing this 4 years. And we were just talking before we started rolling with the audio that, a lot of podcasts don't last that long because people don't understand how much work really goes into it.
Yeah.
And whenever I take on a client or I have someone who is very interested and asks me questions, I always kind of caution them and say, a podcast is an amazing thing, but you have to be willing to be flexible and you have to be willing to go with the changing times and changing situations and things. Don't go for broke right out of the gate, because then you're just going to disappoint yourself later because there's not many people that can keep up that pace.
Right.
And so I'm pretty proud of us. 4 years later, we started out doing it every week, without fail, and we were doing 16 episode seasons. And
we're doing the live stuff 2 or 3 times a week. Good Lord.
But that was during the pandemic too.
Was that?
No, that was during the pandemic too. So
that is true.
We didn't really have anything going on. We had no lives. Our lives were this. But, and then everybody went back to work and things changed. And, I like where we are now. I like the idea that we're not letting it consume us completely, because I don't think that's good for our energy to let anything consume you completely.
Yeah.
So I love where we're at. I love that when we can do it, we do it. And it's still like this great community of people. And it's so cool. So, yeah, it's interesting. 4 years later, here we are. We're still doing it and happy to do it. And I love you, my best friend.
Oh, God. Here we go. Here we go.
I did that on purpose because I knew you'd get all upset.
Nobody's upset.
Anyways.
This is not being upset.
I've seen you upset. Not at me, but I've seen you upset.
Oh, God.
So, plans still in the midst for Gettysburg. So excited about that. We can do some episodes from Gettysburg. How cool.
Yeah, we should just do a whole season from Gettysburg. We can pound out 8 quick podcasts.
We seriously could. Wait until you see it. I am so excited to share it with you because it's one of my favorite places in the world, and you've never been there, and so it's going to be exciting. We were talking about maybe taking a ghost walking tour and checking out maybe the orphanage and the Farnsworth House and the beer garden at the Farnsworth House at Saxbridge and Little Rock. So it's going to be so much fun. So anyways, but this week I thought it would be kind of cool to share some stories. Now, I belong to a group on Facebook called the Unexplained, because why wouldn't I? And groups like this are very interesting to me because this one in particular, this one is made up of people who have had weird experiences where things happen to them and they can't really explain them, or they just want to share them, because we all know that when something new happens to us, sometimes we just have that need to share them with people. And over the years, I've had a lot of people come to me with questions. Like they'll get pictures. Their Blink camera will take a picture of something that's, flying around or lit up or, any of that kind of stuff. Or they'll see like something through their window, glass back door window, and they'll take a picture. And it's kind of like lit up. And they'll send me, what do you think about this? And I think of a lot of these groups, like I think of pictures like that and things, I had somebody send me a picture a handful of years ago, and it was of somebody had taken a picture out their back sliding glass door. And there was a ton of light refraction from the glass, from the sun. It was later in the day, so the sun was starting to go down a little bit. And it looked like some sort of a burst of light or energy in the backyard. Now, I immediately knew what it was. But the person who sent me the picture was not the person who took the picture. The person who took the picture had just lost, I think it was their mother not that long before. And they wanted to know if this could have been their mother visiting them. And whenever I get things like that, I have a conundrum because I know what it is. But will me telling that person to tell their friend, it's just light refraction, look, it's the time of day, it's through a glass window, it's this or that, will that help them in their grieving process? Not in the least. So sometimes I feel like it's better to say, you know what, if that makes them feel better, if that makes them get through their grieving process better and more thoroughly, then let's let them believe what they need to believe. Not necessarily what they want to believe, but what they need to believe. And in that case, I did. I said, this is what this really is. And I said, but I'm going to leave it up to you because you know your friend and you know what her journey has been since losing her mother. I said, this is what it is. But if she needs to hear that her mother visited her, then you let her believe that her mother visited her. And I feel okay with that because I know the grieving process myself. And I know that when we're grieving, we tend to try to search out things that confirm to us that our loved one is okay.
Yeah.
And so it's you walk a line. Sometimes I will be honest with you, sometimes I have no freaking idea what the heck they captured. I just don't. And I have to say that too. And sometimes it's pretty convincing. So you just never know. But to go back to these groups, that's what a lot of times the groups are. And sometimes it's things like, a spider on a webcam and nobody is in a grieving process. They're just hoping that they got the next alien. And people are pretty straightforward with that. And it kind of makes me laugh because it's fun to watch what some people get and they're not sure. And, the other night we got 4 deer in our backyard, which is beyond rare, on our Blink cam. And there was no mistaking. We had 4 deer on it. But I will tell you that there is this one persistent spider every summer who climbs over our webcam, and it drives me crazy because every day I have to go out and, get rid of the web that looks alien-like, but I know what it is. So it's interesting. But this is a great group. This is a fun group because people have had some really crazy experiences. So I thought I'd read some of them today, Todd, and maybe we could kind of like, I'd love to get your opinion on a couple of these. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So the first one is from a lady named Sarah. And she says, 10 years ago, I love this one. My brother and his wife drove to London from Scotland to pick up their new puppy. All we knew was they were going and the breed. On their return, they came to my parents' house and introduced a puppy to my little girl as Leo. She was newly 8 at the time. She immediately got down on her knees like she was greeting an old friend and said, "Hello, Jasper," in a thick Cockney accent. My sister-in-law went sheet white. Seemingly, the dog was called Jasper, and they had renamed him Leo on the way up the road. He was also from a Cockney family. Total mystery.
That's cool.
How wild is that? Isn't that cool? I just love that. And I love the fact that it was from the UK anyways, because that's my dream location of visiting someday. But, I think it's just amazing that children can be so open to gifts.
Absolutely.
How cool is that? I just love that story because they had no idea anything about it, and she got 2 of them right. So just a neat little story. So let's see. What else do we have here? Oh, this was a wild one, Todd. I want to read this one to you and see what you think. Wait a minute. All right. This was from a lady named Enola. I clearly remember being born. When I told my mom many years ago, she was shocked. I described the doctor who was screaming at her so loud to keep pushing, and she was also screaming so loud. Then I saw the extremely bright headlamp of the doctor when I came out and almost slipped out of the nurse's hands as I was handed over. My mother did not get to hold me right away because she was young and the hospital was trying to get her to give me up for adoption. I heard my grandmother arguing, telling them they were not getting the baby. I still hear it to this day. If my grandmother did not fight for me, I would not be the person I am today. Do you think that's possible?
Well, I do, and I'll tell you why. Because I have a very vivid memory that I never understood. And the memory was me seeing the back of not a semi, but kind of like a moving truck kind of thing.
Okay.
With the door open and people climbing in and out.
Right.
And I had no idea what this was, but I specifically remember it. And later in life, I found out through a conversation. They're like, "Oh, remember when after Grandma died, Grandpa had to move from this house," which I remember, and blah, 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 blah. And I said, I remember saying to my mom, I think I remember seeing some of that. And she said, "Well, you were in your car seat in the front seat of the car while we were moving stuff to the truck."
Oh, wow.
And my grandmother died a month after I was born. So I was very, very, very young when he had to move out of that house. So
that's wild.
Yeah. And I remember it even to this day. I can see pictures of it in my mind of what that looked like, but I had no idea it was something real. I thought it was something that, once again, Todd with the imagination had somehow made up. But yeah.
Two points in that. Number one, I think we all convince ourselves so many times that what we experience is imagination.
Mm-hmm.
I spent so much of my life just thinking that all of my things that I was picking up on was just my imagination. Well, lo and behold, it wasn't. And so I think we all kind of do that. But the other thing I learned many years ago, I saw it on. I did not like science in school. I did fine in science. I think I was maybe a B+ student in science, but it was my worst subject. I don't know. I just did not like reading about science, but I would watch TV shows about science because I was interested in it, not just in book learning science.
Right.
But one of the things I learned one time watching a show was that our brains essentially remember and record every single thing that has ever happened to us. Every single emotion, feeling, experience that we've ever had, everything we've seen, our brains record that. And it's basically just a matter of pulling that information out. And I guess you would say if that's the case, then like maybe hypnotherapy is one of the methods that they use to pull that out. That kind of thing. But I thought that was fascinating. And it just makes me think of that, your story and that story about, did something trigger that memory to come out to you, or to come out to her? And then you can't, you know how they say you can't unlearn that? Well, you can't forget that,
right?
That kind of thing. Maybe even like reincarnation, once that comes out and you remember those things, it's very difficult in some cases to forget them.
Yeah.
So I think that's really cool. It's really interesting. I had, we may have talked about this before, but I had, up until I was about 6 years old, I had a couple of recurring dreams, or to me, they were nightmares. If I tell the stories about them today, they aren't the least bit scary, but to a 4, 5, 6-year-old, they were terrifying. That kind of to this day, I still remember them, and they lead me to believe that I may have been reincarnated, and it may have been one of my past lives. And so, sure, I think memories can be pulled out from anything. And so for some reason that stuck with you. For some reason that was still in your cognitive brain of understanding. I just think that's a great story. Okay, so another one. This was from a lady named Wendy. She says, several years ago, my husband and I were considering building a gazebo in our backyard. I phoned a local company to organize a quote. The lady who answered told me her husband was just out at another job and would call me back promptly. I received a call back from the owner of the business and thanked him for calling back so quickly, as his wife had promised. He got my address and told me he was on his way. When he arrived, visibly shaken, he asked me to detail exactly what had happened when I phoned earlier. Confused, I recounted the exact conversation I had had with his wife. He then burst into tears and told me his wife had died a year ago. He told me he had been at a job earlier in the day, and when he returned, he found a piece of paper on his desk with my phone number. He said that no one else had access to the shop. We talked and talked for ages. He was a beautiful man. I have had other inexplicable experiences throughout my life, but this one was a doozy. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts.
Yikes.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Interesting. And in my opinion, totally plausible. I do think that part of our consciousness does stay with our loved ones. I do believe that. And what I thought was kind of cute was that she was still doing the job. And not only was he affected by this, but also the woman who talked to her was able to verify it. So kind of a ghosty story, and a beautiful story, I think. It's a beautiful story of, they're still around with us. A lot of people like to say that, when they're gone, they're gone. I don't believe that. I don't believe that all of their consciousness ever totally leaves. We've had these things happen. We've had a conversation with your mom at Cana Island at the lighthouse. I've had plenty of conversations through Spirit Box and other things with Trey, with my mother. So I do think some consciousness does stay, without a doubt. So
You got another one?
Story. Yeah.
All right.
Let me see. Let's see. Oh, this is weird. Okay. When my fiance passed away, I decided to do a viewing to allow our daughter and I a chance to see him one last time in a more peaceful setting. My fiance was the victim of a hit and run and died on impact. People left him, and I found him that morning with our 8-month-old daughter. Anyways, at the end of the day, I decided to go in alone and say my personal respects and love. As I was sitting in the chair in front of him speaking to him, I swear I literally saw his head shake out of his body and his entire body lifted and disappeared. The figure was identical to him, literally him. A few weeks later, one of my family members mentioned to me when she was paying her respects in private, she saw the same figure of him trying to lift from his body. It gave me chills because I literally watched a figure of his entire body lift from the casket and disappear. Have any of you experienced something like this? I think about this often as if he was waiting to go home until we had that one last chance. Or was I just delusional?
Yeah, that's tough.
That's weird. I will say that a lot of times our subconscious wants things so badly that we want that connection even when they're gone. I think it is possible that it wasn't so much being delusional. It may have just been her subconscious telling her she saw something, you know? What is really weird about it, though, is that another family member said they saw the same kind of thing.
Right.
It throws me off, too, because you kind of think about that. There have been reports of people seeing things like that, like lights coming out as they pass, lights coming out of their body. As if their soul is leaving. But it's just like sort of a one-time thing. It's not separate occasions.
Yeah.
So I just found that one to be really weird and very inexplainable. So I just thought that was kind of an odd one. So one more. It's a little bit long, but I thought it was an interesting one.
All right.
I've posted here before about losing my husband, Carl, in 2019. I have had lots of unexplained signs. This was the first one. The day he died, he had been unwell with what he described as a chill in his back. Now, I think this lady is from the UK because I kind of got the vibe that she was from that area, the way she speaks. He'd been in bed resting. I'd been taking care of him, but had to go to work in the evening. I asked him before I was leaving if he needed anything. He asked if I would run him a bath. Now, whenever I ran him one in the past, he'd let it go cold. He was easily distracted and would forget about it. So I would just run the hot water, figuring if he forgets, it'd still be warm when he remembers. I had done this for months. So I ran the bath, got my coat on, went to the front door to leave. My hand was on the handle, and I thought, that bath is hot. He's not well. I hope he doesn't just stand straight in it. So I went to the bottom of the stairs and shouted, babe, your bath is ready and it's only hot water. No answer, so I went upstairs. I found him on the balcony, sitting upright with his phone in his hand. I started to speak about his bath and realized he was pale. Then my world collapsed. The next few minutes were a blur. A helicopter landed, 2 ambulances outside. They worked on him for 45 minutes but could not save him. All this happened at 5 p.m. The undertaker was delayed and didn't arrive to take my husband for several hours. I laid on the floor with him until they arrived. My neighbor sat with me after my husband was gone. And then, let's see. I'm sorry, I lost track because it was so long. After my husband was taken to the mortuary. The next evening at 8:45 p.m., the doorbell went ding-dong. I went to the door. Nobody was there. The next evening, 8:45, ding-dong. Again, nobody there. This continued for 4 evenings until I removed the doorbell, figuring it was faulty. That evening at 8:45, my landing phone went ding-ding. I was gobsmacked. The next night, I was talking with the neighbor who had stayed with me that first night. I was telling her about the doorbell and the phone. I said, if it's Carl, why is it dinging at 8:45 p.m. when he died at 5? My neighbor looked at me and said, don't you remember, Kirsty? It was 8:45 when he left the house with the undertaker. I stood up and said, sweetheart, if that is you ringing the bell and phone, why are you ringing? This is your house. You are welcome always. No need to ring bells. And it never happened again.
Interesting.
Isn't that a cool story?
Yeah.
That's a ghost story to me. That's a very typical ghost story of I always tell people when they come to me with questions about activity in their home, I'm like, just talk to them. You know, if it's an intelligent spirit that's coming to do things, I said, just talk to them and let them know, you know, either the rules or where they stand, or that you acknowledge them, that you understand them. And then hopefully that should do the trick and you can live peacefully together. And I just thought that was kind of a heartwarming story that she, you know, talked to him and he got it and he understood. And so she didn't have the problem anymore.
Very sweet. I like that one a lot.
If that was a coincidence, that was quite a coincidence.
Yeah, one night, maybe 2 nights, but all those coincidences.
Yeah.
As my
Makes
sister
you
would
think.
say, there's no such thing as a coincidence.
I say that too. But it's true. You know, I'm not being skeptics. Our first thought is always to not believe 150% anything unless we can rule out everything else. And I live by that, you know, and we'll never know for sure. How do we know for sure? Nobody knows for sure. The world's leading researchers in paranormal research and activity will never know 100% for sure. We can only make a hypothesis or an opinion. But sometimes if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it very well could be a duck.
Yeah.
You know? So,
okay,
it's an interesting story.
This may now have to be the end of this podcast forever. Because
Why?
when we started this, I said, if Sandy ever says, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's more than likely a duck. If she ever says that on the podcast, no, I'm just kidding.
Oh, I was going to say, did I? Because it would make sense. But, you know, sometimes you got to go with your gut feeling.
Yeah.
If your gut feeling's telling you, yeah, this is not normal. I'm doing the little air quotes. Normal, it's, quote, paranormal. Then, you know, listen to your gut. So it is what you believe it to be.
Yeah.
A lot of times, you know. Sometimes it's not, but a lot of times it is. So just some interesting stories. I love groups like that. They're fun. Some I've joined and then gotten right out because they were just stupid. I hate when people are mean to each other about things. You know, when somebody obviously has a bug flying in front of their camera or a spider and, you know, and they think it's, you know, an orb or, you know, God coming down from heaven to greet them and say, hey, how's it going? You know, I get that, you know, that's not the case, but I think kindness goes a long way.
Yeah.
And people naturally, it's our human nature to search for reasons for things. So, you know, some I've had to leave because people are less than kind, but there's some great groups out there. So this is called the Unexplained. It's a neat group. It's a neat group.
Cool. We should do one of these again.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm always looking for really fun, interesting ones that are thought-provoking and make you think. So
Cool.
All right.
All right.
Fun times. And a big shout out to everybody for following us. and sharing in our journey with us, because sometimes we don't even know where we're going or what we're doing.
Yep. And that's okay, too, to be honest, I think.
It sure is.
All right. Well, next go around, we'll find out what we're going to talk about next time on the Sandy and Toddcast. And until we see or hear you again, bye.
Bye.
We make podcasting easy. Mindgarden Media can get you going on your very own podcast. With many years in the broadcast and audio industry, Mindgarden Media can edit, fully produce, and provide all the web distribution services. We're podcasters too, so we'll guide you every step of the way to a professional-sounding podcast production. For information, email the mindgardenmedia@gmail.com, the mindgardenmedia@gmail.com, or check us out on Facebook.